What if the real monster in a horror story isn't what lurks in the shadows, but what's in your mind? What if horror isn't about jump scares at all, but about what refuses to leave you after you finish the book? Today, I want to share 9 horror novels that I deeply believe are underrated and deserve to be on your shelf. They're the kind that crawl under your skin, whisper in your ear, and stay there long after the lights go out. We begin our journey where many good horror stories begin, in a cornfield. Still Life with Crows by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. A series of grotesque murders rock a small Kansas town. Patterns emerge, ritualistic, unnatural, maybe even supernatural. And the only one willing to look deeper might be the strangest man alive, FBI agent Pendergast. Still Life with Crows is not a typical horror novel. It's more of a mystery and a procedural, and a part of a series that is one of my favorite series of all time. It walks a razor sharp edge between mystery and horror. It's fast paced, remarkably fast paced. It feels like you're reading a movie. You could picture everything going on in your mind. And I'm not kidding when I say there are scenes that happen in cornfields that to this day make me terrified of cornfields. If you like crime thrillers that flirt with the supernatural and the uncanny, this is a great book for you. And it is one that you will remember, especially if cornfields freak you the crap out like they do me. Surely I can't be the only one, right? But maybe cornfields aren't your thing. Maybe for you, you're looking for something a little bit more possessed. A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. When a teenage girl begins showing signs of possession, her family does what any desperate family might do in a modern world. They sign a TV deal. Cameras roll, the world watches, and you, as the reader, you're not sure if you're witnessing a miracle or a mental breakdown. Paul Tremblay is a prolific horror writer that, in my mind, is severely underrated, and more people should be reading his books. And this book in particular, I think, is one of his best. He plays with your perception like a magician, like he is the puppet master and you're simply the puppet. You think you know what he's going to do, and then suddenly a string gets cut and you're faced in a completely different direction. This is the type of horror that is about belief and faith, but how media easily twists and turns all the things that we hold dear. It's about manipulation and how anything in our lives can be turned into a spectacle. If you like your horror psychological and disorienting, this one is a slow spiral into madness, and it's a great time. And sometimes the starting point for madness is grief. Those moments where all of life seems to be draped in the funeral colors of black. The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. When a young solicitor travels to a remote estate to settle an old woman's affairs, he uncovers more than just dusty ledgers. There's something in the mist, watching him, waiting, and once it sees him, once it sees you, it doesn't forget. This is Gothic horror done right. And although they made a film of this starring a grown-up Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe, the book, once again, is far better. It's elegant, it's sparse, and it's devastating. The amount of loss and grief that are experienced in this beautifully Gothic novel is something that you will remember. Susan Hill reminds you that atmosphere can be one of the most terrifying things in a story. And atmosphere sets the stage for the tricks that our mind plays on us. Every creak of the floorboard feels like a heartbeat. Every gust of wind feels like a whisper. It's a masterclass on how to build tension just with description, just with the atmosphere and the ethos of what's around you. And more than most other books, this story shows how to scare with restraint. But maybe you like your horror a little bit more picturesque, then perhaps you should read Strange Pictures by Uketsu. Across 9 eerie drawings, a story begins to emerge, one that connects to a murdered woman, a frightened child, and an online audience obsessed with decoding every line. Each picture is both clue and curse. Strange Pictures has been one of my most interesting reads this year. It is not at all what I had expected it to be, and it really is like a mystery that unfolds as you continue to read it. There's a little bit of a language translation issue that makes it feel a little bit discordant, but that fact even adds to the creepiness as this continues on through the story. And pretty soon you end up not where you expected, and you want to reread to see all the different things you may have missed. This book is like reading a haunted art exhibit. Uketsu gives you fragments of stories and forces you and your brain to connect the dots. And that's, I think, where the horror hides, because our brains can go to some pretty terrible places, and our imaginations can be incredibly dark. It's unnerving, it's clever, and genuinely one of the most creative books that I've read in a long time. Sometimes, though, you don't want something modern and picturesque, you want a classic tale. We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. In a decaying estate on the edge of town, 2 sisters live alone. clinging to routine and superstition. The rest of the world despises them, and maybe for good reason. Something terrible happened in that house, but the truth is locked behind smiles and nursery rhymes. Many people have read The Haunting of Hill House, Shirley Jackson's probably most famous story. But We Have Lived in the Castle stands in its own right. I had never read it until several people saw my previous video on 10 great horror reads for autumn, suggested it to me, and I'm glad they did, because I thoroughly enjoyed it. Maricat, one of the sisters who are central to the narrative, is so innocent and childlike and whimsical, and yet incredibly unsettling and creepy. This isn't a story about ghosts per se. It's about isolation and trauma and the fragile logic that we use to just survive. Shirley Jackson, I think, is the queen of what I would call quiet horror. Nothing is overtly grotesque or overly tense or jump scare or anything like that. Instead, every page just hums with tension, and it's a tension you can't name. If you've ever felt like the world is closing in on you, that you need to protect yourself and shut yourself away from everything and everyone else, this book may feel a little too uncomfortably close to your reality. If Shirley Jackson's world is quiet and claustrophobic, our next book is the opposite of that. It's loud, chaotic, and drenched in fluorescent light, but the monsters are just as human. Fantastic Land by Mike Bockoven. After a hurricane devastates Florida, a group of survivors is trapped inside a massive theme park. Days turn into weeks. Power's out, supplies run low, and order collapses. When rescuers finally arrive, they find something far worse than nature's destruction. This book is told through interviews and reports, and it feels like if Lord of the Flies decided to take place at Disney World. And I'll be honest, this one hit a little close to home. I lived in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, and I remember seeing the video footage of Six Flags New Orleans being flooded and inundated with water. And I have no doubt that the author took inspiration for his story from that event. But this story really is about how quickly people unravel when rules go out the window and the stress of survival kicks in. And honestly, the scariest part of this book, the thing that's most unsettling to me about this book, is that it doesn't seem far-fetched. Yes, there's some fantastical elements of Fantastic Land, but so much of the story, especially in our current world, seems like, no, this could probably happen. If you haven't read Fantastic Land, I would definitely encourage you to do so. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Now, amusement park terror is great and all, but what about horror born of tradition? Because sometimes keeping old customs alive comes with a price. The Salmonac by Lisa Morton. A small town revives an ancient festival, but the rituals awaken something that was meant to stay buried. As the veil between worlds thins, old debts come due. This is a short and slim novella that carries a lot of weight. Morton pulls from genuine Gaelic folklore and mixes it with modern anxiety, and she does it beautifully. This is a pretty short book. I think it was 90 pages, maybe 100, but there's so much depth, there's so much haunting just atmosphere. The way folklore mixes with the modern realities of our world were just so beautifully done and so unsettling and creepy. I have yet to meet someone who has read this short story that didn't enjoy it. And although it's a short read, every page just kind of like tingles and drips with Halloween energy, with spooky season energy. So if you were looking for a short book to read during the Halloween season to just give you those vibes, this is probably going to be a great option for you. Overall, it's this idea that sometimes what is sacred can be the most dangerous. And when that sacred and dangerous thing feels like it's watching you, it doesn't feel like you can ever escape. We move from sacred fires to southern porches, because sometimes the thing that terrifies us wears a friendly smile and brings you a casserole. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. In 1990 South Carolina, a group of suburban moms form a book club until one of them suspects the charming new neighbor of something unspeakable. He's handsome, he's charismatic, and people near him start to disappear. I'm a big fan of Grady Hendrix. I will say that all the time, and this is one of my favorite books. This is actually probably one of his most popular, so it may not be the most underrated of his, but I actually don't see this book talked a lot about in just the broader context of horror novels. And this is a great book. It's horror with heart and humor, the way that only Grady does. He skewers sexism, suburban life, and suburban culture, and the myth that does exist of the perfect neighbor. It's gory and funny and surprisingly emotional. And it's a book that asks, what would an ordinary person do to protect the people that they love? Honestly, I enjoy this book quite a bit and I recommend it quite a lot. There is one scene in particular that happens in an attic that to this day, oh, it just gives me the heebie jeebies. I didn't sleep the night that I read that. It was all at once claustrophobic, and I don't want to say more because I don't want to ruin it. But if you've read the book, you know what scene I'm talking. You know what scene I'm talking about. And if you haven't read it, you should read it, and you will know what scene I'm talking about because it will get to you for sure. Where the Southern Book Club explores what someone would do to protect their family, our final novel asks, what are we willing to sacrifice for freedom? Dark Harvest by Norman Partridge. Every Halloween in a small Midwestern town, teenage boys hunt a pumpkin-headed creature that rises from the fields. The winner earns escape from the town. The losers feed the harvest. This book is short, it's brutal, and mythic. It's like part fable and part fever dream. Imagine if you took Sleepy Hollow and the Hunger Games and they did the dirty and had a weird baby. This is what that baby would be. This is a book that is slept on way too often. It's not the scariest book you'll ever read, but again, it just has such deep Halloweeny and creepy vibes, and it does raise actually some pretty deep and interesting questions that I don't know how often we allow ourselves to think about. Dark Harvest is a book that will unsettle, will make you chuckle a few times, but you'll also think about more than you probably realize that you would. I believe the best horror isn't just about what scares you. It's about what lingers. It's about the guilt you can't shake, the questions you can't answer, and the shadows that surround you that look a little too much like you. So here's my challenge to you. Pick one of these underappreciated books to read. Let yourself get lost in the shadows, in the creaking floorboards, or the mist that hugs the ground. Let yourself hear the whispers and be a little uncomfortable. Read something that makes you nervous, because I really do believe that horror, more than a lot of other genres of literature, don't just shock, but really invite the reader to do some deep examination of the darkness within themselves that sometimes we're just afraid to face. I hope you enjoy The Crisp Air, The Longer Night, and as always, stay curious, read deeply, and I'll see you in the library.